Let's put our button bar on. Okay, in order to make a button bar, we're going to go to Resources, and let's go to the Moose Loose Menu Wizard. And this is another tool just like this thing going on here, this responsive tool. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a class. I'm just going to call it Menu. And let's see, we're going to have a home button. We'll have an about. We'll have, I don't know, a shop. We'll have a product. And we could probably have a contact. Okay. And maybe under about we'll have location. Oops. Location and staff. And I suppose under contact we could have phone and email. And maybe a contact form. Okay, notice that it already started creating the CSS and the button bar. Okay, so what we're going to do, this is the REST background. So I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to pick this particular green so that our site is consistent. Let me grab that hex. I'm going to put it here. There we go. And I think we'll have white buttons. And then when we mouse over, we could probably get that orange. Let's get that hexadecimal there. Hover button. And we'll maybe, let's see, how does the white look? Oop, I forgot the hexadecimals, the octathorpe. There, that's pretty good. Maybe we'll make the buttons black. Yeah, text. And then we'll just continue this down. When you mouse over, and we'll make this white. What am I doing? And then we'll just put the orange back for the background color. And we'll make it black. So this is what our button bar is going to look like. Oh, that's just gorgeous. Alright, once we have our button bar, all we have to do is grab the horizontal CSS because it's going to be around the top. And here it is. Now look real closely. There's functionality. That's what makes the buttons actually drop down. And then we get down into the style where we change the colors and the widths and the locations and things like that. Now we're going to move this into our style CSS. And I just want to point out this red down here. This is especially important because your buttons are going to change according to the width of your screen. Right now, you can see that by default, the padding on the buttons are 4 at the top and the bottom and 18 to the sides, and the font size of those buttons will be 12. But we're going to take this and put this in each media screen so that we can make adjustments according to the size of the screen. Alright, if you already have a style sheet, you should just grab it from the functionality down. This is in case you don't have a style sheet and you want to embed it in the header or somewhere without a style sheet already designated. So we'll just grab the functionality all the way down to the bottom here. Copy that. And we can go to our styles, our CSS, and where we put our functional, what do you call it, the structural CSS. We can put all that CSS there. Okay, we're going to save that. And then when we go back over here, we can get the button code, grab all of that, and we're going to put that in our navigation. So I'm going to look for content for demo 12, nav goes here. There it is, and so that puts the button code in. So we put in our CSS, and then we put in our CSS, and then our buttons. We'll refresh it and see if our buttons are as beautiful as we hope. And yes, they're as beautiful as we hope they would be. Okay, let's get rid of all this columns and stuff now that you understand that. We can go down to the bottom of our HTML and we can get rid of that. Remember, we put that in just so that we could see the columns and we could see everything else, and so you could understand how the columns work. Alright, so here we have our beautiful, beautiful button bar with all the drop downs and ready to put hyperlinks. Well, of course we have to create those pages. But look, as you scroll down, as you resize the screen, this is obviously too big. It's going all the way across. And in fact, when it turns into a phone, it turns into garbage. And so what we're going to do is deal with these buttons. And the way we're going to deal with the buttons is go down to that. You go to that horizontal CSS. You grab only the red. And then you go to your demo CSS. And you look for, I don't know, let's put it in the area where the responsive is between 960 and 1023, and all we have to do is paste it in here. And what we're going to do is resize the buttons. So at this point, maybe we will put less padding on the two sides, and we'll make it 10. So that on the top and the bottom, there will be, I don't know, let's make this 2. Now let's make it 3. So our buttons are going to have padding 3 pixels at the top and the bottom, and the padding on the side is only going to be 10, and we could probably move this down to 10 pixels as well, or 10 points. Now watch what happens. I'm going to save, and we're going to go into our beautiful site. Here it is. And so the buttons are the default. But watch what happens. Okay, you see how they shrunk down? So by changing the padding, you can adjust the buttons accordingly. So now that we have that, we can grab what we just did, all the way up to the menu, copy this, go down to 768, paste it in there. I'll move it a little bit farther so you can see what's going on. And maybe we might want to put a padding on the top of the buttons, 2, and maybe to the side, 8. And 10 point would probably be just fine. So let's see if we can resize the buttons according to the size of the media query or the viewpoint. There they get smaller. And they get smaller. And so there you see that you can change the size of the buttons per size of the screen. Okay, so that becomes very important and responsive because you don't want the button bar to keep going all across. Alright, here's at 480. We know it's 480 because if we refresh, we can see that it's between 480 and 7, or between 768. And so we can see if we're going to do this, we have to go to the 480. So let me go down. Here's the 480. I'm going to grab this again. See, it's a lot better if you do one media screen and then you just keep working your way down. And at this point, I think I will make it 1 pixel padding. I might have 6 pixels padding and move this down to 8 points. So you can see as it is going down size, our buttons are changing size too. So let's refresh and take a look. There they are. So as you can see, you can determine the size of the buttons per media screen as well. They're pretty big here. What I tend to look for is where they wind up. This is right under the P. And if we go down to 480, it goes a little bit further. But as you can see, the buttons are getting kind of squashed. And notice how far apart they are now. And that might not be a good thing. So at 480, let's go back over here, and you can see that there's CSS. These move the buttons up and down. We might want to move them up a little bit. So the margin top, we could probably put maybe -4, and watch what happens. And remember, we're dealing with the 480, so the buttons are going to go up a little bit. There they go, maybe a little bit more. Let's make it go up, I don't know, let's make it go up 6. So we can move this button bar around too through the CSS. Okay, now look how far apart these babies are. And so what we can do is look, move buttons closer or farther apart. So I'm going to move them closer together, maybe do a -5. Let's see if a -5. And this is the drudgery of being a webmaster. Okay, they're closer together. So that looks pretty darn good. If I wanted to close this gap between the parents and the children, I can do that as well. See where it says move drop down set. Move the drop down set closer or farther from the main bar. So I'm just going to move it up by giving it a -2. And now they're closer together. So I can not only adjust the size of those buttons per media screen, but I can also adjust them, move the buttons around. I can move them all the way to the top if I wanted. But why would I do a thing like that? Now here's the problem. When we get down to this point on the phone, we probably don't want those buttons anymore. We're going to have a hamburger or a little nav device up here. And so we're going to get rid of those buttons altogether. This is how you do it. Remember, in the CSS, you have, I go back here to the nav. Okay, here's the text. Here's the nav. So you know that you have the div right here. Here's the header, and then we have the row containing nav. So there is a div called nav. So what we can do is take that nav, and at the 480, let's do it let's make it disappear on the phone. So when the media width is between 380 and 479, we want that nav to disappear. So I can do nav display none, which means that when it gets down to that size, that is between 380 and 479, the nav is going to actually disappear, that button bar. And I'm going to do the same thing on the smaller phone size when the phone is between 320 and 379. So when I save that, watch this. This is like magic. I'm going to refresh. Look what happens when I shrink it down. And it gets to 480. Okay, that's 480 because we know it's 6 columns and 6 columns. But when it gets to the phone, that whole button bar is going to disappear. And when it gets down to the 320, it's going to stay as well. And so we can make not only change we can make it so that the buttons are sizes per media screen. At certain points, you can make divs actually disappear when they become unhelpful. Okay, so that's how you're going to do that. You can make those disappear. But what do we do now? What do we do now? How do people get around the site when it's small? That's a good question. Navigation. And so let's go to the tool, and we are going to create an AMP. We don't need this anymore. Now we're going to create an AMP button. Okay, so you go to this AMP navigation over here, and it tells you this goes in the head, because this is all of the things that need to be in the head if you are going to have an AMP. And so I'm going to copy this, And where does it go? That's right, in the head section. Not the header, but in the head section. So I'm going to go up to the index. Here's the head right here, right here. I'm going to paste that in. Okay. And then I'm going to go down further. And this is where our button is. This is going to be our hamburger. And so I'm going to copy this. And although it says button in the nav, we're not going to put it there because the nav disappears. What the heck? Okay, so we're going to go over to our header. Here's our header. And where it says content for class demo header 12, paste it here. So that's our button. Okay. So let's look at it now. So what's going to happen is when we go to our demo, we're going to have our hamburger up there, or our little navigation button. Right there. Because we put it in the header section in that nested portion. Because it's in the nested portion, we can move it around. But it doesn't do anything. Well, that's useless. And so, let's go back to the tool and go to our AMP navigation. And further on down, we have the nav flyout. It says put way at the bottom inside the body tag. So I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to put it way down at the bottom, just like what it said, right before the closing body. And what you see here, I have some default buttons. I have home, about, location, there it is. And I'm going to copy, I'm going to save it. I'm going to view it in the browser. I'm going to refresh to see if it works. Yeah, like I said, it's okay. Now look, when you click the button, you get this AMP navigation scheme. Okay, and if you wanted, you can make it go from the right. If you go down to the bottom, right before the closing where you put it, you'll see it says it comes off the right. Well, you can have the button bar come across the left. Yeah, let's do this refresh. Maybe it'll be faster. And it comes from the left now. Now, if we wanted this scheme inside the menu, all we have to do, because those are the buttons. Looky, if you go back up here and you see your UL, I'm going to grab all the LIs between the UL. Right there. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go down to the bottom, and I'm going to highlight all the LIs, the list items, paste it in there, hit save, and because we move those LIs down there, let's refresh. Now look. Now that is exactly what we have here. See, the contact has these three because we moved the LIs. So if you're going to create this HTML page and you want to add buttons or change what they say, you kind of have to change it at the top in the button bar, and then you have to go to the bottom. Now we might want this blue to reflect our color scheme. So let's go ahead and make this orange. Let's make it green. So I'm going to go grab my hexadecimal for that green. Then I'm going to go up to the top. Remember, that's where our CSS is, right here. And you see AMP sidebar. There it is. And we want the background color to be green. There we go. And we could also change the button color. Right now it's blue. The toggle is the button. We can change it to green. Okay. And if we want, we can go to the toggle hover and have that be orange. So I'm going to go get the hexadecimal for orange for our site so it's consistent. And here's our toggle mouse over. Right now it's red, but let's make it orange. And let's take off this border. We don't need that border. Okay. We'll take off the border on that too. So if we save it, we can go back here. So we change the colors to be more branded, and when we click, it's green. Okay. Now you'll notice that there's a graphic for closing, and it's a little moose. Now I know you probably love mooses as much as I do, but let's say you don't want that moose. Let's say you want to brand it according to your client instead. You would go down to the bottom in that navigation and looky here, right here, in this amp close image, there's a link to moose, so you can change that to whatever you want. Okay. In fact, even if you don't want that closing, you can go ahead and grab that amp image for the close and delete it. I know, you probably don't want to do that because of moose and all, but you don't need that closing button. It's kind of a nice little thing to have. But notice that it no longer has the moose. And as soon as somebody pokes it on the phone, the navigation is going to go away anyway. All right, there is your responsive site with, look, when it gets to be that size, 480, it's in the way, it's interfering. So you can go and change that as well. So this is at 480. Maybe we want to move that menu button or even get rid of it altogether at 480. Yes, let's get rid of it altogether at 480 because it's interfering with our graphic. Now we could move it over. I'll show you how to move it over instead. Yeah, that's what we'll do. So looky, at 480, let's go down to our CSS. So on our iPad, we're having trouble with that. So between 480 and 767, okay, well, it's between, here we go. What we're going to do is move that header. See, this is where the menu button is, or the hamburger position. So it's -5 from the top. Let's see where it is. Okay, let's move it all the way to the, let's move it up some. We're going to move it up. Let's put a negative, I don't know, let's put a -9. And then let's move it left a little more. Let's move it down to 25. And when we save that, remember, we're moving the hamburger position at 480 width. So let's save that and watch it moved it over. But not much. So, but it did move it over. Let's get really crazy here. Let's move it from the top. Let's see how far this is up. We can move that a little bit more. Let's move it to the top 11 and move this over 29. Okay. So you can see by using the CSS, you can move that all over the place and move it to be exactly where you want it to be. Okay, so now it moved up and it moved it over a little bit. You can move it down. You could even move it over to the other side depending on where you want it to be. If you wanted to move it over to the right, you could put, well, we won't. Yeah, let's do it. I'll just show you this just so you know. Let's say because it's 480, let's move it 460. So it's going to move it left 460. And in other words, that button is going to change position. There it is. So you can move this hamburger all over the place according to the media screen. So you look at these spots, it's over there. And then as it shrinks to 480, it goes way over here. Let's move it over so that it's like right on her hair. Let's guess. So we moved it over 460. Let's try 360. So what happens is you're redesigning the site according to the size of the screen. It's like redoing. It's like creating what 5, 6 different websites. And it works a lot better when your computer moves along. Like this is gonna take all night. Oh, that's not good. It's over her ad. So we'll take a little bit more off. Let's say 310. So you can see that all of this is important in creating your site for the different widths. There. So all of a sudden we have the menu here. This menu. Good. And then when we shrink it down, the nav bar disappears, and we can move this down over here. So at this, let's go down to the 380. Right now the hamburger is top, but let's do the top. I don't know. Let's put 80. 80. So we'll do it down 80 at that size. Whoop, too far. So let's move it up 40. Yeah. And maybe a little bit further down. Let's make it 40. Let's make it 50. And let's move it over. Let's move it over to 0 pixels. Let's see where that puts it. There. So that's kind of cool. So you can have it totally move around wherever you want it according to the media screen. Okay, so on the smaller phone, let's just take this, put it down here for the smaller. Okay, and on this one we can move it up some. So top 50, let's move it up 4 pixels. I mean not 4 pixels, 10 pixels. There. So as you can see, so you can't. It's going to move it around according to the screen. Alright, there we go. And that is how you can manage the navigation on a responsive site.